Okay, so welcome everyone to another session here at the studio. Today we're taking a look at the photos from episode 26. Let's just jump straight into it. I captured in total just 34 pictures, which is kind of low for a session, but mainly the reason for that is the extreme long exposures that were happening on this day. So anyway, we can see here in the beginning I was trying to find the composition, so I immediately found this trunk lying there and I thought it looked really cool. So I tried a lot of different things just to really figure out how I wanted to frame it and use it in correlation with the background. So yeah, here I'm kind of set up the way I wanted it and trying a few brackets just to see how it looks. But as you can see, the water, there's kind of a lot of movement in the water and I didn't really want that. And if I wanted to smooth it out without an ND filter, it would just be outblown. So slap on a ND filter on the next picture here, and here you can really see the issue of not covering up the eyepiece. I mean, this is just unusable, and this is really the most dramatic example of it I've ever seen. Yeah, so just cover up the eyepiece and it's gone. It's the light leaking in from behind, from the eyepiece into the sensor and just messing up everything. Yeah. So here we get into the real picture that I wanted. So the point here really is to, partially looking at how the light is on the trunk itself. You can see this picture is a bit underexposed. So is this one, but if you look at the histogram here, we can see that it's almost touching the right side on the highlights are just about not blown out, so it's actually kind of a good exposure to work with for a single exposure. I mean, lifting up this much is not really going to do that much, introduce too much noise in the shadows anyway, so that's kind of a good exposure for this picture. You can see here it's a bit darker as well. Here it's starting to be a bit more color in it, but it's a lot darker. Oh, I haven't reset it. Let me just reset this one. You can see this one is a lot darker as well, but it's a lot more color here. So what I'm actually gonna look at, or the two, rather the ones that are looking best on the histogram where I have most to play with are these three images. So what I really have to go on then is how the clouds are looking, because that's really what is the biggest difference between them. And I really actually like these clouds the best, I think. Basically because they are, well, it's a nice curve going through it. Also, they are kind of uniform. Here there's a bit more color, so that might be cool as well, but I think these clouds are a bit more sporadic, and I think this is actually going to be the hero shot. So we're gonna start work on this now. First and foremost, I want to try here with the camera calibration, or rather, before I do that, I want to increase the exposure a bit, just to get it a bit cleaner, something like this. So so I increased it by 1 stop, and now I want to see, put the portrait something a bit more neutral, camera neutral. I think I'm gonna use portrait actually. Using something like landscape, it gets a bit too high contrast for, well, how I want to start it out. I actually really like the portrait profile. Anyway, let's start with that, shall we? Let's see. First and foremost, I think, well, most of the detail here in the sky is really lacking, so I'm gonna bring down the highlight slider just a bit. Bring up the shadows, not that much, just a bit, so that we can see a lot of what's happening here. Now it's looking really dull, so let's adjust the white points a bit, just to bring in some pop here. Yeah, something. This whole part here is almost white, so I can just push all of that actually and use it just like this, just so that it doesn't introduce any complete whites up here, and I think that looks kind of good. Yeah, and that also introduces a bit more interest here in the bottom part. I might actually reduce the shadow just a little bit and introduce a grad filter on this instead, and then reduce quite a bit of the shadow there, and then take a grad filter, pull it up something like this, and increase the exposure just a little bit here. Perhaps we can bring it down a bit, and then bring up the whites just a little bit as well. Something like that, perhaps. How does that look? Yeah, that looks kind of good. So it's kind of lacking in contrast at the moment, actually. Let's bring up the contrast. Now, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do that in Photoshop instead. Lens correction, let's do that. Oh, and it removed the vignetting now, so now I actually have to reduce the white point again. I guess I could have started with that instead. Actually, you know, going a bit back and forth there, but I don't really want I'm just gonna keep all the data inside the picture for the moment being, and we're gonna take it into Photoshop and do some things there. But I think I might actually increase the vibrance just slightly. Seeing as this is just one picture, I can as well actually introduce a bit of dehaze. Yeah, let's do that. How is the color balance looking? Is it a bit... Oh, it's... I think it's a bit grey looking at the top, actually. Could do something like this, you know? Let's just reset everything, bring down a grad filter here, and then just slightly introduce a bit more blue, like this. So just make it a bit bluer up there. Yeah, I think that looks kind of good. So now let's see, remove all the details, reduce the details to 0, and let's open it in Photoshop and see what we got to work with. We can actually open it as a smart object now that we're only opening one. And what that does is actually you can adjust that layer, that smart object layer. You can adjust it in Camera Raw with all the settings that you had from Lightroom. So that's actually kind of cool. So now we're in Photoshop here, and well, first and foremost, let's look for some if there are any dust spots. So I'm gonna duplicate this one. I'm gonna rasterize it. Where are you? There, rasterize layer. I am actually now gonna switch to the Wacom tablet. What we need here is a J spot healing brush. Here we can see a few little dust spots. The image is actually really flat right now, so what I'm gonna do is use a brightness and contrast layer, and I'm gonna increase the contrast. I'm actually gonna use legacy perhaps. Or am I? Yeah, let's use the legacy one. Here we can really start to see the dust spots, and just when you're doing this, just make sure that you're not sampling all layers. You just want to sample the layer that you're actually on. Else it's gonna look really weird when you remove the spot healing brush, or when you remove the contrast layer. So now it's actually quite easy to see them. The good thing about this picture, and why there aren't actually that many super visible dust spots, it's because the dirtiest part of the sensor is actually hidden, or is rather down in the right corner, where we have a lot of other things going on. So I'm not really gonna see any dust spots on this down here. Yeah, it looks to be kind of it. Not too bad this time. Seen kind of a lot worse actually. So yeah, here we have a little bit of hot spots actually. So let's just remove those. And oh yeah, that looks kind of good. So let's remove this and see how it looks. Here we can see in the dark there was one hiding. Any more? We have a few of these. Let's remove these as well. Maybe not all of them, but let's just remove a few. So yeah, it was really in the shadows that those hot pixels were showing up. Yeah, I think we got most of them now. It's not too bad. So yeah, the healing part is done. Let's zoom out again. Look at before and after. Not too big a difference here. Let's rename them. Original and heal. Well, now I want to add a bit more life, a bit more contrast and things. So I'm gonna jump into Nick Collection and Color Effect Pro 4. Nice thing is that it's free now. It's been for the last half year. That's really nice. What I really like is the Pro Contrast filter. So how is color cost looking? Yeah, it doesn't want to do anything really. Correct color, correct contrasts. Should be nice. A bit more. I'm gonna protect the highlights actually. Quite a bit. I'm gonna protect them a bit more. Let's protect them quite a lot. That adds quite a bit of contrast here, where we really want it. Dynamic contrast is really going to bring a bit of life into this trunk. So let's see how that looks. Quite a lot more interest. Maybe oh, let's add another one. I actually think I want some tonal contrast in this one, so I'm just gonna zero out everything here. I don't really want saturation there, but the mid-tones here I really want some more contrast in, I think. So let's just add a control point here. That should negate the effect in the sky and just keep it here at the bottom. Shouldn't it? Yeah, that's looking good. Perhaps a bit in the shadow as well. Perhaps a bit. Now let's just keep the highlights down low. Oops. So how's that looking? You can see it adds quite a bit of interest actually to... Yeah, it adds quite a lot of interest to the whole thing there. And I'm just gonna add another contrast color range as well, just to see what the color contrast is going to do. Could add a bit, yeah, it adds a bit more perhaps. Actually, I'm gonna do the same, add a control point down here. And just do like this perhaps. Then I'm just gonna add another one here for a little bit, but I'm gonna down the opacity on that one. I'm just gonna do something like this. So how's that looking? Yeah, that's looking kind of good. That's kind of extreme, but we're gonna go with that. And we can just reduce the opacity layer here in Photoshop if we don't really like the strength of the effect. And the layer is in. Is it a bit too strong? Perhaps it is a little bit too strong. Let's lower the opacity just a little bit. Yeah, something like that looks good. I'm gonna duplicate the layer, increase the opacity to 100. Then we're gonna go into filters, other, high pass, user radius of perhaps a little bit more on this one, 2.5. I think that should do it. The trick, use a overlay, and then you're gonna zoom in, and perhaps that a bit. Is it too strong? Perhaps a little bit. Let's reduce it just a tiny bit. And that looks good. As you can see, it is affecting the water a bit and introducing a bit of noise. And since we did go through the trouble of smoothing out the water to start with, let's not destroy that. So I'm actually gonna add a black mask on this one and have a brush. Use white flow. Let's use flow of 100%. We don't need the brush to be this hard. Something like this perhaps. And just paint it in. The sharpening. Where we want it. We really want it here in the foreground, obviously. So how's that looking? Let's just go over it quickly here. And with like something like a 50% brush, a really small one, soft one, something like this perhaps. Let's just do a small one here in the background as well. It's really not gonna be that visible, but it could be nice to have in a way. Let's see how that looks. It's not really affecting too much here in the background. Let's add a bit more, shall we? They are kind of diffuse to begin with, so as you can see here, we have the town background. They're not really that pretty, so I'm wondering if maybe I should remove them. Should have done that earlier. Didn't really think about it. I'm not sure. I can see a few hotspots here as well. Yeah, well, I'm gonna decide on that a bit later. It's not really visible when you're looking at it at 100% though, so. How's it looking down here? Yeah, it's a really visible difference down here. So that's looking kind of good on that part. What I really actually want to do here is add a bit more of a color interest in the sky now. So what I'm gonna do is add a curves layer, and we're gonna go into, I want it to be a bit more pinkish, so I'm gonna try to, let's see here, increase a bit of the red. See, something like this might be cool. Add a black mask on this one. Brush 50%. Now let's go for like 70%. Increase the size, and then just, what have I added here? Added something weird. Oh, of course. Silly me. There we go, black mask. Where did the fucking... The issues. Anyway, let's just paint it in here. Add like a little bit of it down here. Here is really the part where I want it to shine through, here in the middle. So something like this should perhaps add a bit more interest in it. Yeah, I think that really adds just a little bit more. Let's see what happens if we go into the red again and increase it just slightly. Starts to kind of overpower it, but perhaps one stop more like that. Is it a bit too much? Use it like soft light? No. Is it supposed to be something? If we use it like color, it really doesn't affect the... It doesn't increase the exposure of the picture. That's kind of nice. So I'm gonna use it at color, just to add a bit more color there. Perhaps reduce it just a tiny bit. Well, let's go zoom in here 100%. And let's reduce the size of the brush. Paint with black and just paint it out over this area. Let's use 100% for that. It's not really that visible here anyway, but it's just good to be thorough and keep it at a good level. Zoom out. Look at the original. Yeah, it's a huge improvement. It adds a bit of the... well, let's just look here. You can see on this one as well, we have a bit more color, and really here in the end it started to show really a lot more color actually, just to show you. So you can see here that it's actually a lot more color in the sky, so I wanted to kind of bring a little bit of that out. So you can see it's not as dramatic, but it actually is a little bit more interest than just completely blue skies. It shows that it is at sunset. There is some sun there and shining a little bit of color at least. I'm actually thinking as well, let's see if I could add a bit more of the green into the moss here in the foreground. So green, let's go a bit down there. If we down the blue a little bit as well. Is that too extreme? Perhaps up the red. Just to get perhaps a bit much. You can see these like really small adjustments really do quite a lot actually. Well, we're gonna see. So let's make the mask black. Brush. Let's go with 70. Increase the brush size. I'm gonna paint with white. I'm gonna actually zoom in a bit. Yeah, and just start paint it in a little bit of it. See if it does any difference at all. Sometimes when you're trying to change the color it can look really weird when it's affecting the whole image, and then when you're just affecting the part that you really want, it kind of looks okay. So we're gonna see how this is gonna look when we're just affecting like the green part of the moss here in the foreground, which is really what I wanted to make a little bit greener. So yeah, as I'm painting it in here I can't really see too much of a visual difference at once, but that's why we make it layers, so we can do like before and after. You can see it's a bit greener. I'm gonna go into, first I'm actually gonna zoom out. I'm gonna go into the green channel again. Select this one, if I can do that. Just try to increase it ever so. Yeah, I think it actually looks better when it's a bit greener. Perhaps there. Yeah, it's green. Here you can see it's kind of a reddish hue to the moss, which I don't actually want. But I can see I'm bleeding over a bit as well, so I'm gonna zoom in 100% here and try to fix that. So we're gonna paint 100% black, a bit of a smaller one here. Just try to correct my spill. And I think it's better to actually spill into it rather than into the water. I think it's gonna show less. When you're doing work like this, this is really where the pen is starting to show its brilliance. And when you're happy to have it, I almost never use the pen in Lightroom. I just find it completely unnecessary for the kind of work I'm usually doing inside of Lightroom. So that's starting to look a lot better. As you can see, there is actually a bit of no. I'm thinking I'm actually gonna smooth out the water a bit as well. I don't know if you can see here. This gradation, there's just such a fine nuance shift here that even a full frame 14-bit sensor really can't keep up with it. So when I see this, I really wished actually that I had something like 16-bit from the medium format line instead. People say that you really can't see the difference, but well, it completely depends on the work, of course. But if there wasn't any difference, no one would actually be using it. No one would be using such a huge system for no apparent difference at all. Anyway, this is not what the video is about. Yeah, there we got it. That looks kind of good. So let's look at before and after. Oh yeah, it's really popping. It's really popping now. So the smoothing, how should I do that? I should just blur it in a way, I suppose. I could actually do, let's do it like this. So create a new layer here. That's gonna override everything, of course, but then we go into camera raw filter, and then we go to where do I have the detail? It's here at the start there, and we increase the luminance quite a bit, and it should really make it all kind of a bit more painterly. Can we remove a bit of color as well? It's removing quite a lot of it. Where is it? Yeah, well, I don't want to do that. So just the luminance there. And press OK. It's gonna apply it to that layer. Water. Smooth. We're gonna add a black mask, brush, white brush, 100%, and just kind of paint it in. Actually, I could do it to the background as well. Let's do that. So I'm just gonna paint in this with the mouse so I get everything to be painted in easily. So it's not really that important to get everything. Yeah, well, let's just paint it in here as well. Bit more carefully. You can see it just smooths out the the water a bit more. Yeah, well, now to the most important part, and the final part, I guess. Some dodging and burning. Might actually do this. Yeah, well, let's just overlay 50% gray. Name it DNB. Let's use 10%. I'm gonna start to actually do some broader changes to the picture, just like applying a primer of sorts, just so, and then, well, paint in the details afterwards. So this part is supposed to be bright, this part is supposed to be a bit darker, so I'm just gonna start to paint it in to be a bit darker here actually. Same here. This is supposed to kind of be in shade here as well. And I'm really just mostly gonna focus on the foreground here. That's what's important when doing this, I think. That's really what needs to pop. I mean, the background doesn't really need it. So just some quicker applications here at the beginning, and we will go in and do a bit finer afterwards. So now we added quite an extensive bit of shading here. Let's apply something that is a bit brighter as well. So we actually want this to be brighter as well. Really want the top of the rocks to be separated from the sides. Same here, I guess. But here you can see that it's really wet here, not as wet here, so it's actually going to be a bit brighter than here. The water is kind of soaking up a bit of the light. Here you can see just a little rim of light going down there, having some reflections here. Just applying. Now we're really starting to get into a bit of finer details of the whole part here, I guess. Here we have some. Let's look at it. Starts to add quite a bit more interest. I'm actually thinking I'm gonna do a bit more on the moss here. I want the moss to actually stand out a bit more from like the rocks. Really want this part to stand on its own here. Maybe I went a bit too far there. Let's just bring it down a little bit here. So let's zoom in a bit. Start to make like a bit finer adjustments. What I want to here is really to accentuate the bumps. So highlights on one side and shadows on the other side. And it really gives the whole foreground quite a bit more depth. Because really shadows that give depth to a picture. So just try to add in a bit more of these deeper shadows. Well, so I'm just gonna keep doing this and I guess speed it up because it's gonna be kind of time consuming, I guess. So I think I'm kind of done with the dodging and burning, and I think it looks quite a lot better actually. It's really quite a lot more depth in the foreground. I chose to add a bit more light here than perhaps would be natural, but still I think it looks really cool. And also theoretically it would reflect some light from the water here to this part as well, but this is facing a bit more inland, so this is staying dark with a few highlight spots there. And as well you can see added really a lot of shadow to the back of the rocks as it's facing towards the light source, and it really should be a bit darker there anyway. Well, let me just look quickly up here. I could actually add just a little bit. I think I'm going to do that quickly, just add a little bit of darkness here in the over here. Well, let's do that. It's going to be a little bit less accentuated if I do that. But this part is just so small compared to the foreground, it's not really gonna show too much at all. Actually, I could do a little, like, I could do it really a lot finer here and accentuate the shadowy parts from the more brighter parts, but I'm just gonna bring it all down just a little bit. Yeah, I think that actually gives, looks, yeah, that looks better. So I would say that the image is kind of done right now. So there we have the original Lightroom edit and the final edit. It's a huge difference, really. Yeah, that looks kind of good. So now I'm just gonna save it, save as, and first I'm gonna save it as a PSD with all the layers if I want to go back and change anything later. And that's the nice part of using layers in this way. Like every step that I did is actually a new layer, so I can always go back and change something later if I want to. Well, if you want to learn more about the workflow that I'm using here, you should actually check out Elia Locardi's guide on landscape photography on f-stoppers. That's really where I was inspired to start using a system like this. Before I just, well, I did a lot of the similar work, but I didn't really keep them as layers and saved it so that I could go back and edit it if I wanted to. And now everything is very much a non-linear well, editing way, so I can just go back and change something quite a long back. So yeah, I really kind of like that. Now that that is saved, so now we need to flatten the image. Still, sometimes something weird happens, but it still looks kind of good, right? Yeah, it looks the same. And now we're just gonna save as and go to the TIFF folder, save it as a TIFF, save, okay, and just quickly save it. There we go. Now I can close Photoshop. Go to library, PSD, TIFF, and we should have it here. I'm kind of pleased with it, so I'm gonna give it 4 star. I can explain the star rating system at a later point. The shadows are really looking good, but if we see at the histogram, there is a bit too, well, a small part left till we come to a complete white point, so I'm actually going to increase that just to there. And what it gives is just a little bit more life in the sky. It looks a bit especially when you compare it. So if you compare it, it looks a bit more dull here and a bit more alive. When you do that, then you're using the whole histogram. So, well, now this image is ready, and I'm just gonna upload it to somewhere and see what kind of response I can get from it. So thank you for watching this editing commentary. I hope to see you soon again. Subscribe if you want to see more, and well, see you later.